trust those big programs when you do see them fall behind to potentially make the comeback, but watch to make sure that they have made those adjustments and they have improved.
Speaking of coaches, that's why I think St. John's is getting all this hype.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, look at them. They've been
fantastic.
fantastic.
They can't make free throws. No one seems to care.
Yeah.
No one seems to care. They can't shoot a 3-pointer and they can't make free throws, and no one seems to care.
You're listening to Behind the Lines, a podcast presented by InplayLIVE and powered by Pinnacle, the #1 sportsbook where winners play and never get limited. Go to pinnacle.com/InplayLIVE to sign up and get in the game.
Welcome in. It's Behind the Lines, powered by Pinnacle, purifying the sports betting industry. I'm Shane, he's Pace, and we've got Gosu with us in the house. John Wilson with us for a big-time bracket grind this week. Yes, it's officially March Madness. The bracket is out. We're going to break it all down for you. We'll identify some upsets, try to look for some value, maybe even bring up some futures bets. We'll see, and help you win your bracket contest. But more importantly, profit throughout March Madness. It's much more than just bracket building for us. All right, big news here. We'll be making a bracket here on the show, entering it into the InplayLIVE bracket challenge, which all of you out there can enter, whether you're part of InplayLIVE or not. You can still enter this bracket challenge. And if the bracket that we make here on the show, that we will show you before the end of the show today, if the bracket we make here on the show wins, that prize money will be added into the Pinnacle contest that we're running, Pinnacle/InplayLIVE, to sign up at Pinnacle if you haven't signed up yet. And we've been running a Pinnacle contest here on the show where a lucky contestant each quarter is going to get $1,000 USD added into their Pinnacle account. That contest is already running, well underway. But if this bracket that we're creating wins, then that money will be added to the Pinnacle contest. Pace, is there anything you want to tell anybody about the InplayLIVE bracket challenge or the Pinnacle contest?
Yeah, for the InplayLIVE bracket challenge, I know there's dozens of brackets out there. We have a really cool bonus feature this year where you get to pick a bonus team, and every time that team wins a game, you get the bonus points of their seed multiplied by the number of wins that they get. But the catch is that team has to be a team that you also picked. You don't have to pick them to win it all, but let's say they did win it all and you had them to make the Final Four, you wouldn't get the bonus for them going to the final or winning the final. So it's the number of wins multiplied by the seed, and provided that you took them to win on your bracket on that next match. Anyone can join. It's $100 Canadian, and the winner takes all.
Wow, awesome. Well, I know that in the past that pool has gotten to be a pretty substantial amount. I think was last year's well over 10K.
I don't remember, because when it comes to this kind of stuff, Shane, I'm usually eliminated by the end of the first game. I think Auburn was the first game last year, and I think they lost. I think I was done after the first game, so I really don't pay attention to it after that.
Well, I remember it being well into five figures, decently into five figures, because I know people can enter multiple times, and people really get into it, and we get a great turnout for it. So that would be if the bracket we make here today on the show that we'll share at the end wins, it's going to be a significant amount that would be going into the Pinnacle contest. And I think that'd be pretty cool for anybody who takes that down. Yeah.
It'll be, right now it's kind of like, oh, cool. But if it actually wins, then people will be interested.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So Shane, you're picking it. People, that gives people a back door. Like if they're entered, that's great. But it gives people a back door to cheer for your bracket.
Yeah, well, the one created here, absolutely. I'll do my own separate bracket. We'll see how it turns out. I gotta put a bit more time into it, but I'm hoping today's show will help me sort of sort things through a little bit too, and figure out where I want to go. Yeah, the beauty of hosting this podcast, I learn a ton, and I enjoy it a lot. All right, you brought up Auburn. Why don't we start there? Because to me, and John, I'm really interested to hear your take here. When I saw Auburn selected as the #1 seed overall yesterday, I was like, are you effing kidding me? I mean, this is a team that's lost 3 out of their last 4. They haven't looked great. They're going to be playing the winner of Alabama State St. Francis, which is a play-in game. And one of those losses, those 3 out of the last 4 losses, was to Alabama State in overtime. So, John, tell me why Auburn should be the number 1 seed overall, or do you agree at all?
I'll be the first to admit I don't typically follow the bracketology stuff until like the last couple of days. So I did kind of assume that they were the number 1 overall like a week ago, or even 2 weeks ago, especially before they lost a couple games. I guess the criteria is, it's not really like who the best team is or like wins and losses necessarily. It's like who you beat and how, like, and who you lost to and all that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of and they also said that they don't really care about the conference championships and those tournaments. So it's kind of like the opposite of what the college football playoff committee seems to value. So I guess I don't really have a good pulse at all on like what makes a team like ranked higher or lower in their mind. But it is kind of crazy to me that they seem to have really struggled the last week and a half. And granted, they played some really good teams, but I just thought to me, it just seems like common sense that Florida would be number 1 overall if they're the best team, if they won an SEC tournament and everybody thinks the SEC is the best, or Duke, if Duke was, number 1, ranked number 1 in the country, and, they won their tournament without their best player, stuff like that. So I guess I was a little surprised, but I didn't really, it's just not something that I feel like I'm an expert on. So I guess I kind of curtailed my surprise a little bit.
The fuck, John?
I know.
Pace, what'd you think? Were you surprised? Did you think that Auburn should be number 1 overall? I know that you love the SEC.
It's all so stupid, Shane. All this shit is so stupid, man.
Yeah.
I understand the hype. I get it. I'm a part of the hype. We love betting this time of year. That was the most predetermined, nothing else can happen, nothing else matters, 1 seed of all time. Like, what I watched from Auburn was downright disgusting basketball. Disgusting.
It was
basketball.
bad.
They were
terrible. Thank you.
They looked fucking terrible. And then it's like, and the 1 seed is Auburn. Sweet. I would be stupid to say they don't have a chance, but I am stupid. I don't think they have a chance.
Yeah. I would honestly, I don't know that I'm going to take this on my bracket or the behind the lines bracket for that matter. The promo bracket we're doing here on the show, but Alabama State already beat them in overtime like 2 weeks ago. Not even 2 weeks ago. It was like less than 10 days ago, and they could face them again. And it cost us.
It fucking cost us.
So I don't know. I'm tempted to take Alabama State, but we know that
Hold on. No, they lost to Alabama, not Alabama State.
Was it not Alabama State?
No, they lost to Alabama.
It was Alabama?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I think, Shane, okay, we're talking shit about them. I think they'll handle Alabama State or SFU. We don't know which one's advanced yet when we're recording this. Right. I don't know if that game's on Tuesday or Wednesday. So, anyways, it doesn't matter. But, yeah, I think they're really going to struggle against Louisville or Creighton. I think they can handle Louisville or Creighton. If they have to face Texas A&M or Michigan, Michigan's got a turnover problem, but Michigan's defense down the stretch has just been amazing to watch. Some of those comeback wins and the way they won their tournament was fucking electric. Like, those were some of the most exciting games. You know what? More specifically, they're the exact areas that Michigan excelled that Auburn failed at. It was down the stretch at the end of games, clutch baskets, clutch moments where Auburn just looked terrible. And not only that, their star player kind of seemed like the quarterback of it all. Missing open layups, taking bad shots, going 0 for 2 from the line.
Breaking the free throws is just brutal.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I think Michigan would be a real tough opponent for them. And then, like, getting into potentially the Sweet 16, you're looking at like a Michigan State, a Michigan State potential in the Sweet 16. Yep. That would be tough. And then once we're getting to the Elite Eight, on their side, St. John's maybe. God, they look fucking amazing.
St. John's looks fantastic.
And then of course Florida, like on their side, they might have St. John's or Florida. Like, can they get all the way there? Yes, but just with what I've seen from the clutch metrics with them, it's not looking good.
Yeah, when you talk about having to play perhaps Michigan and then a team like Michigan State and then a team like Florida or St. John's, that seems like a gauntlet, especially for a team we've seen lose so frequently of late.
Yeah, well, I think the gauntlet side of the bracket is actually the bottom left there. If you're Florida and you have St. John's waiting for you and some of those other teams,
Texas Tech.
Yeah. There's been some really good basketball played in these last couple of weeks. It's been a lot of fun to watch, but I'm pumped. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. John, what part of the bracket are you sort of most excited about? Is there an area that you're kind of looking at where you're really sort of think it could be very, very close?
I think that I do think Auburn's definitely ripe to lose to like some quality teams. Of the four number one seeds, they're kind of I think the most vulnerable, for sure. Just kind of the way they play, they're a little erratic at times. The defense kind of slips. They've definitely like struggled in some tight games. I'm looking at the bracket right now. I like the Duke side of the bracket where you've got our guys Liberty there. I don't know how good any like Oregon really is. I don't know how good the Big Ten really. Like, I think everybody kind of agrees the SEC is obviously the best. Though I do kind of want to fade some of those lower tier SEC teams, I think, because I think maybe like kind of the goodness of the conference or the perceived goodness of the conference kind of maybe makes people overhype a lot of teams that are basically about 500, a little better than 500 and below 500 in their own conference play. So teams like Texas, or because I think they're in a first four game, or Mississippi State plays Baylor. Like, Baylor's got experience, been there, they've done that. It's a winning program the last several years. So that's in that Duke side of the bracket. I think I want to kind of fade Mississippi State there. Definitely want to fade Vandy, who's really struggled down the stretch. I was surprised they weren't one of the first four. So I think that's like a place I want to tag some weak SEC teams and some questionable Big Ten teams in Oregon.
Right. I'm glad you brought up Vandy there, because St. Mary's, I think they're in the trapezoid. We covered the trapezoid of excellence last week with Ryan Hammer on, and St. Mary's, they're in the trapezoid. I think we could see like a first round exit from Vandy.
Yeah, I mean, I think St. Mary's. I haven't looked really at any of the lines. I'd have to imagine St. Mary's is a favorite, though maybe not, because just with the way the SEC is so propped up. But Vandy's been very bad the last couple of weeks. They're in purely off of their large. Like, they beat Tennessee and they beat Kentucky. I think they've had a couple like really, really good wins. And so they're in from those early season wins. They have not been good lately. So that area of the bracket, I think Duke's in a really good shape to just kind of walk through there, assuming Cooper Flag is healthy, because I think there could also be a lot of upsets in that bracket.
St. Mary's minus 3.5. That's the line there. Over under 136.5.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. We talked about Duke kind of walking through. Is there anybody in this bracket that you think can really challenge them? Because I don't think there is.
You mean in that region specifically?
In that region, in the East, yeah.
I mean, I think like maybe Alabama's a really good team. I think I don't have actually. I'm a big futures person. I actually don't really have that. I mean, I have some free bets out there. I think I have Wisconsin at like 125 to 1. I don't really know how. I don't remember when I bet that, but like at some point I have like a free bet on Wisconsin 125 to 1. So I'm hoping Wisconsin can make a little run there and at least maybe meet them in the Elite Eight there. But we'll see.
Right. Yeah. You brought up Liberty, our guys, Pace. I think there's just one guy that's our guy. Last name Metheny. This guy is could shoot the lights out, as we saw. Do you see that 12 seed beating a 5 seed there with Liberty, Oregon?
Well, I think what's important about March Madness and the tournament is that there's lines makers that are creating spreads on all the games.
Yep.
And then there's the bracket and the seeds of the bracket. And I think like if you're building a bracket and you don't know what you're doing, you know, it might be obvious to think like, oh, okay, who's a good example on here? You know, Kansas is a much better team than Arkansas because it's a 7 versus a 10 seed. Or Arizona is a much better team than Liberty, specifically the example that you're giving there. Well, it is important to go look at what the odds makers think when you're building a bracket, because that's going to tell you a little bit more information on just how big of a favorite the sports bettors or the handicappers of the world actually think that they are. So the seed doesn't necessarily mean that they are a favorite or that they're that big of a favorite. That would be number one. Number two is with all these, you know, collegiate conferences, there's a really good chance that these teams haven't played each other before in the season and potentially even like the decade. Like it can be a long time where two of these matchups have seen each other, and oftentimes that can be because you have a team that, you know, hasn't made the tournament from some of these smaller conferences. So that creates a real challenge for bookmakers in adequately handicapping a game. And that's why we've seen teams like St. Peter's a couple of years ago. You know, they didn't even have sponsorship. They showed up to the game in like Adidas sweatpants that looks like they bought them from Winners or Ross that day to make sure they were matching for being on TV for the first time. That just came out and like shit kicked everyone until they got to the Elite Eight. So, you know, there are games that are mispriced or mishandicapped because of the fact that these teams haven't matched up before, and potentially the juggernaut or the higher seeded school, they really don't know how this team truly plays. And when you watch some of these conference tournament games that have just passed in the last couple of weeks, you'll look at a couple teams, like in particular, what's the team that went out of the California division, John? They played Irvine. They played Irvine in the final. I thought Irvine looked so damn good during conference week, and then UC San Diego looked unbelievable in that game. Are they playing UNC and they're in the first four?
No, they're playing Michigan in the first round.
I'm trying to find them on the bracket.
They're in the play-in, so it's San Diego, UNC in a play-in game.
No, that's a different school.
It's different. No, they're playing Michigan. They're in Auburn's bracket.
Oh, top left. Okay. Yeah. So
UC San Diego.
There's a good example of a really, really good basketball team playing against Michigan, who just won the fucking Big Ten. Right. And I know I just said Michigan could potentially beat Auburn, but I didn't even look at who they were playing. Like, that UC San Diego team is fucking good. Now
the line there is 2.5.
How do you handicap that game?
Line is 2.5. Michigan.
There you go. So there's a really telling example of a high seed playing Michigan. Michigan got kind of the shitty end of the deal there. That is no cakewalk against the 12 seed right there. Now, that might be a game as well where if you weren't looking at, say, what the lines makers think and you just snap pick Michigan, I wouldn't blame you for it. But if you do go and look at what the lines makers think, and that line was closer to, say, 10 or 15, which you can sometimes see in these circumstances, I'm not saying to bet on UC San Diego, but once that game's tipped, you're going to get some really telling things relative to the line on whether they were right or not. Michigan might run them over. I have no idea. But some of these schools that played really well in their conference tournaments, they're gelling, they have momentum, and they love embracing that underdog role. I think, sorry, Shane, I think Liberty is one of those schools. They played tremendous basketball. I don't know that they can beat Arizona.
Oregon.
But Sorry. I don't know if they can beat Oregon, but they were goddamn electric out there. More importantly, when the moment was big, they scored. And that is severely underrated when it comes to these games, because no matter how well you've played all season, when it comes to those final 5 minutes in tight games, whether it's the full court press, whether it's the ability to get that basket in the frickin' hoop, whether it's getting to the line and actually making your free throws, they really checked the boxes from what I saw in their conference tournament. So they could definitely be an exciting underdog.
The spread on that game, Liberty, Oregon, is Oregon minus 6.5. So 6.5 point spread there. And that example you brought up there, Pace, sort of, the difference between Michigan and UC San Diego, a 2.5 point spread in favor of Michigan, the 5 seed versus a 12. You go to something where it's like a 14 seed, Lipscomb versus Iowa State. That is a 15.5 point spread in favor of Iowa State. So, it's one of those things where, the spread is so much different, even though the seeds are only a couple seeds apart.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, very much so. So John, as you kind of look at things and you're sort of maybe thinking about some wagers to place, what kind of markets do you like to look at, maybe that are just, maybe it's futures, which I know you love to do, and you can give us some insight there. But are there any other sort of markets that maybe you look at pre-tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely look at all the different, like, I guess, futures type bets. Like, you can, because a lot of books will have, obviously you can bet on who wins it all, but a lot of books you can bet on who makes it to the Final Four. Sometimes you can bet to make it to the Sweet 16. I want to say on books like FanDuel, you can actually just bet them to make every specific round, like Sweet 16, Elite 8, like all that kind of stuff. You may be able to actually parlay them together on some books as well. But yeah, I definitely look at all of those things, because I think sometimes there's some real inefficiencies. Like, I remember this was probably 3 years ago. I think it was when Houston, it was like the first year Houston was like a top 5 team in a long time. And they were still in the American Conference back then. They weren't in the Big 12 yet. And the market was really, really low on them. Like, I think just to make it to the Final Four, they paid really well, and they were like they were the 1 seed, or maybe they were the 2 seed that year. I can't remember. But it's like sometimes you'll get these teams where there's just not a lot of money in the market on them. The public doesn't really respect them or anything, right? And so they're everybody, if they're in the same side of the bracket as Duke, let's say, where there's probably a ton of liability on the books for Duke to make it to the Final Four to win the championship. Like, if you were to go look at, that's probably, if you were to go look at like Wisconsin's odds right now, or like other higher seeds like Arizona in that side of the bracket, like there's probably really good value on those teams, just because there's so much money, I'm assuming, on Duke, because they're Duke and they're the best. They've been number 1 for so long that you're going to find value. And sometimes that's even to just make it to it's sometimes that money that's on Duke is influencing the number on that team to make it to the other teams to make it to the Final Four to win it all.
Right.
But it'll also influence the number on them to make it to the Sweet 16, which has nothing to do with Duke. They don't have to play them yet to make it to the Sweet 16, but that number is like derivative of the other numbers, right? So you can find like a ripple in the odds there, where there's like this other team that's there where all this money is, and it doesn't even actually have anything to do with the bet you want to place, and you're just finding value.
That's a good point, John. Actually, because you brought all that up, I think it's important you bring up your buddy that has this Duke future. And you recommended on stream last night a method of hedging for the tournament. So this is great advice for people that have a really good future. I would say for any sport, but it might be a little bit more consistent with a single elimination playoff. So specifically like college football, NFL, March Madness. The other thing too with Duke is the last 2 years, we've basically seen the team that's supposed to win. And that isn't necessarily common. And if we rewind the tape to when Purdue lost to the 16 seed, they were the team that was supposed to win.
That was only, 2 years ago?
Yeah. So no. They won. It was the year before they won that they got bounced. Then they won with Zach Edey. They lost the first year. They won the second.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that might have been 3 years ago, but either way, who cares? John, your buddy's got a huge future on Duke. You were recommending a hedge strategy. Do you want to just maybe walk us through what you told him?
Yeah, and the numbers I use will just be for just theoretical purposes, but it's one of my buddies, like a guy it's a buddy of a buddy. So he was asking me for advice on how to hedge a future. Let's imagine he basically has let's say $10 to win 200,000 if Duke wins, because he's parlayed it with other national championship type things like Dodgers to win World Series, that kind of stuff. And all of those other legs have won. So he's got $10 to win 200,000. And he's like, oh, how do I hedge this? So, well, the challenge is they have to win, 6 games or whatever it is to win the championship. So you can't really bet against them every time. You could take the other team with the points, but then it's what if they just cover the spread every time, and it's then you've lost everything. So what I suggested in doing is find books or there's future exchanges. We have one now in the US that's regulated called Kalshi. I think it's the only one that's actually regulated and licensed in the United States, but in other parts of the world, these types of future exchanges are everywhere. And so you can basically go and bet Duke not to win. And so what I suggested was, figure out what would be a nice little amount of money that you would be happy to get, out of it, assuming they lost in the first round. And then what would be a nice amount of money to get in the next round. And so let's say you have, $10 to win 200,000. So you're free rolling 200,000. I said, well, put 5,000 that they don't win to pay 1,000, in the first round, for the first round, assuming they're probably going to win that game. And then or you're betting no. So you're betting 5,000 on no at let's say minus 500. Then the next round, maybe that number is minus 400. So you bet 4,000. And then the next round, they're minus 300 not to win at all. You bet 3,000. So you're kind of slowly getting in at better prices where you have to hedge less. So the further they go, the less you have to hedge, but you're still securing money without eating too much into your stake or your profit amount early on. So that way you're kind of, what's the last thing you want to do is hedge now. Then they make it all the way to the finals. You could get them normal. You could get their opponent normal juice if they're playing Auburn or Florida or something. And then they lose there. And it's you hedged at minus 500 for, half of the money. You'd feel really dumb, even though you won something with your hedge. It's well, I could have gotten a much better hedge price later. So it's getting into that market slowly at a time, so you don't regret it later and you feel better about it. And then you're still not using as much money. So when they actually win, your total payout is higher. You didn't hedge as much, right? So that's kind of the strategy. Just hedge a little bit at a time as the price gets better and better and better.
Yeah, my advice would be don't hedge at all.
Hedging's for garbage.
I agree. $200,000 is life-changing money.
Yeah, with the $200,000
people.
Yeah, with a $200,000 payout with Duke to win right now, I do think the best thing that you can do. I don't you could sell it on an exchange and things like that, but there's nothing wrong with looking at creative options. And if you're going to go, okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is bet on whomever Duke plays in the first round on their money line. I probably wouldn't take that approach. I think that there is a degree of safety for them to definitely make it to the round of 32. And also, it should be the kind of game that they could just really curb stomp their opponent, where people get a little bit even more hyped on them, right? Where the futures prices go down even further. But then once you start getting into it, like you said, John, it's yeah, you can bet against them, but then the middle opportunities start popping up from the standpoint of spreads and different things like that, where you could be sitting in the Elite Eight where you've hedged and actually won money from taking some spreads along the way. And I know that strategy can add up as well, but we're talking about essentially a 200,000x, or in this case 20,000x payout. So yeah, you have some wiggle room to shoot your shot and maybe make even more money. Yeah. Right. If they're sitting there in the Elite Eight as a 10-point pregame favorite, and you take a little bit of those funds and you take the spread on their opponent, Duke advances and you hit the plus. You have more hedge money for the next round, and you've made a profit. And if you lose, you go, hey, well, that was a part of my budget for the $200,000 payout that's pending. And by the time they do get down to the final four, provided that they do, they might be negative odds by then.
Yeah, they probably will. I think they'll be favored against almost anybody. My suggestion is more so catered towards people who can't afford to lose money hedging. So, we would come at it from the standpoint, like I would do what you're saying, which I would take the spread of the dog every time. The problem is you can middle yourself with everything. If Duke covers all the way until the final,
yeah,
and then you lose, and then you've kind of run out of money martingaling your hedges, and then they lose. Then you've just lost everything. So people who don't have that much money to hedge and want to guarantee money, my suggestion is to always try to directly bet the opposite thing, but to get in slowly in these tournament formats.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Wow, great advice there, though, and it gives a lot of insight into how you kind of think about this, which is just awesome to kind of hear. All right, Pace, you don't bet pregame. You famously don't put anything down pregame, but I'm sure you're going to make a pregame bet or two. If you were to tackle anything pregame, what would you look at? Or are you just, nope, I'm going to do it all live?
I will not make a pregame bet.
You will not make a single pregame bet this tournament, other than building a bracket.
I'm really on Matt's train right now. If I can't beat him, join him. So all his fanship, all his bullshit, I'm just betting everything he says now. I'm like, okay. So I think I will have one pregame bet. I think I'm going to end up having a bunch of money on UNC pregame until it loses, because I've literally flipped the script. It pissed me off so much. I was finally like, why are you mad about something that is never going to change? Join him. So now I'm like, no, they're my guys too. I got them plus 8.5. I got them to make the tournament. Like, I made all those bets with them. So now I view it as I'm free rolling. I'm not going to scale up on the calls. I'm gonna take my quarter unit and I'm gonna have it on UNC pregame, whatever the spread is. I don't know what it is tomorrow. By the time this airs, you'll know if I won or not. But he's gonna call it, and I'm gonna take it with him. But no, that's it. No pregame at all, except for what Matt calls on UNC.
Love it. Okay, all right. For everybody out there who doesn't know Matt's one of the pros at InplayLIVE. He makes a ton of calls, but he also has a lot of teams that he's fans of, and UNC is one of them. All right, so you're gonna ride with Matt's pregame, is what you're saying. That's it.
Only on UNC.
Only on UNC. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. What's your approach, though, to actually making money when the tournament begins?
Yeah, so I think that's really important. And this is the meat and bones of this podcast, in my opinion. Shane, you and I did an episode at the start of the new year,
yep.
And it's one of our most viewed episodes, and it was basically how to make money from betting on sports. So I'm going to do a quick rundown on how to make money betting on college basketball, specifically betting on March Madness. So there's things we brought up last year. I'm going to bring them up again. The first is your bracket bias. You have to drop your bracket bias. Now, saying that, we talk about execution versus theory all the time. The theory is so simple. The execution is extremely difficult. It doesn't matter if you have $5,000 on the line in a game. You still think, oh, but I bet Auburn in my bracket. It pops up in your head. You see it in the chat on our InplayLIVE streams. You see it from the pros. Someone wins, you're like, oh yeah, I had them in my bracket. They're sitting with that chip on their shoulder the whole time. So theory is so simple. Execution is extremely difficult. John, you would be the better person to advise on that, because you always have pregame bets in and you have to drop them constantly when we bet live. So any tips you have for dropping bracket bias or pregame bet bias, but that is the most important thing as you head into a game betting it live. Any advice on that, John?
No, as far as that goes, I mean, I actually try to avoid like a lot of stuff. Like I don't like fantasy football really. Like I'll do it begrudgingly. I don't really enjoy it because I think like it gets in the way of me properly analyzing players and teams and all of that. I tend to not do
I don't know what you're talking about, John.
I don't really do brackets. Like I'll do it. I mean, it's just, there's no stakes to it, I guess. I don't.
You do bet pregame and you have to bet against it live.
That is,
so
yes. Okay. Yeah.
It's the same philosophy. So
Yes.
What would you say for that?
Yeah. I just forget. I mean, I just forget about it. Like I don't know. It's the same, but we also do it live too. So, great example yesterday. We took the Stars minus 2.5 because they were outplaying the Avs, right? Or was that yesterday or the day before?
Other way around. Avs minus 2.5 because they were playing the Stars.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so we took the Avs minus 2.5 because they're outplaying the Stars. They were at home and they were up 2, and we're getting a good number early. Well, then the Stars tied the game, and we look at the overtime data and how they're playing. The Stars are better in overtime; they're outplaying them. So we took the Stars money line and we just ignored the previous wager. If I take a pregame
and they both lost.
Yeah, and they both lost. So you could do both. It's like if I took a pregame line of like a team minus 5.5, and then their opponent's coming back on them, and I want to get in a little bit on that opponent money line, and the team that I bet on at the beginning of the game or pregame wins by 3, I lose both bets. But it's just different scenarios. It's like I'm just playing the hand I'm dealt, and the team that I thought was going to show up didn't show up. Like that's whatever analysis I had is over when I am sitting down and watching the game. So I just I'm used to losing bets. So I think you need to be comfortable losing and being comfortable being wrong and recognizing that you are that and just move on and then start betting the situation that's currently in front of you.
I feel like John just proved my point because he made it sound so simple again. It is really hard, guys, but the method is do not worry about your bracket. Do not worry about your pregame bets or don't do either of them. So that you can have a clear head going into the actual betting. The second thing is it kind of speaks to our episode on chaos theory, but expect the unexpected. In the last 2 weeks, you guys would be able to add to this list, but a lot of times in the past, I haven't watched a lot of the conference tournament games. I watched as many as I could in these last 2 weeks, and what I saw was shocking, and I really do mean shocking. Officials that call fouls in one game or for one team from one game to the next is unbelievably different, like shockingly different. You have refs where a kid is bear hugging, saying to the ref, I'm fouling, intentional hacking at the end of the game, where you see the ref shake his head and go no, basically saying we're going home right now. We saw a ton of that. We saw officials where if someone breathed on them for both teams, they just instantly call a foul and the teams are going to the line, and you feel for the kids. You're like, these kids are playing championship level defense right now, and these officials are not giving them the chance to do that. So it doesn't allow opponents to necessarily get back in the game to the degree that they could because the defense is being punished. We watched a team who had won the game already try to be disrespectful against their opponent. The player watched everyone walk off the floor. He looked back. He was under the hoop, saw that all the players were walking off the floor, and he crammed a dunk in with 1 second left, which in my opinion could warrant a fight. Crammed the dunk in with 1 second left. And the officials did not count the basket. They just nodded their head and told the scorer's table it doesn't count. But by all, the basket was off with well in time, no fouls, no nothing. They're just walking off the floor. He scores a basket. They just said, no, it doesn't count. So there is, and then this excludes some of the comebacks and the craziness and the half court threes and buzzer beaters and everything. Expect the unexpected and don't let it put you on tilt. You have to keep a clear head. So when this shit happens and you're like, that's clearly a foul or whatever it is, react, sure, but let it go. Move on, because there's nothing you can now do about it now that it's come and gone. The rules are different than the NBA. So where it's clearly out on this person or where it's clearly a foul or whatever, some things get reviewed in college basketball, but there are no challenges. So there's a lot of reviews for some shit that might seem crazy. But yeah, you're going to see some things that are blatantly wrong or incorrect. That doesn't mean that it's rigged. Okay, guys, it doesn't mean that it's rigged. Okay, when it comes to sides, so betting on spreads, the most important thing late in basketball games are things that are hard to handicap. How teams handle the press, we don't see it in the regular season. So as the tournament progresses, if you see a team with the lead that is getting pressed really hard and they break it consistently, they don't turn the ball over, they inbound the ball well, and they have a strong free throw percentage, that is a great team to wager on their side, provided they have the lead in the next game. However, if it is the opposite, they don't have, it doesn't matter what their free throw percentage is. That matters. But do they make them down the stretch, right? That's huge. The opposite of that is, do they struggle with the press? Who did we see struggle with the press in 2 separate games in the conference tournaments this past week? Do you guys remember? Louisville. If Louisville has the lead, they miss their free throws. They can't handle the press. I'm sure they're practicing it right now as I say this. But they were fucking terrible at the end of basketball games. So when you're looking at sides, if Louisville has the lead, I would stay away from their side of a minus, and I would actually consider the plus of their opponent. Okay, when you're looking at totals, so that's sides. When you're looking at totals, pace of play is important. But it's largely, so you think about the trapezoid of excellence. Oh, there's Alabama over there. Does that matter? Hell yeah, it matters. But what matters most is how they play with the lead late in the game. So the pace of the previous 15 minutes in the half almost gets thrown out the window. It's important, but it almost gets thrown out the window. So that's, again, where you go, geez, look at Florida. They used the entirety of the shot clock when they had the lead. They slow the game down. They shorten the game. And then you look at another team where you go, oh my God, they don't know to do that. One could be good for an under. The other could be good for the over. The second is the losing team. What tendencies does the losing team have late in the game as it relates to their desire to come back in the game? And the biggest outlying team we saw in the conference tournaments was, anyone? Clemson.
Yeah. Well, they played each other. They played Louisville,
right? Yeah.
In that game, yeah.
The Clemson was the biggest outlying team we saw. I won't say why. If you guys want to make money on a Clemson game this tournament, you go ahead and figure that out for yourself. But they were the biggest outlying team of the conference tournaments. I cannot wait for my opportunity with Clemson this tournament. So it's not about pace of play. It's how the losing team behaves when they're down. Complete opposite of Clemson. Who did we see come through yesterday? Was it against Florida? Who did Florida play? Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Now, will Tennessee play that same way in the March Madness tournament versus the conference tournament? I don't know, but they didn't press. They didn't make Florida's life difficult down the stretch. They basically said this game is over, right? And then as for money lines, I think one of the biggest things to look for is just if you do have a team like Duke that gets down, make sure, because this is tricky, you love an underdog that's decimating their opponent. But if you see that they're down and they're figuring it out, trust the best programs to get the job done. That doesn't mean you're going to win, but your percentage of wins will be much higher. Now, that can be really tricky because if they're a minus 15 favorite, that doesn't mean there's value on them because they're down. You have to pick your spots with the games that don't have these massive favorites. Probably you still want them to be a favorite, but where they aren't these massive favorites and you go, okay, this is a great spot. They're down late, but they know how to get the job done in these spots. And hopefully we'll see exactly that. The best example of that we saw from these past 2 weeks, in my opinion, as good as Liberty was Michigan.
Right.
They played those final few minutes as the losing team in multiple high stakes games better than you could ever ask on both sides of the ball. So keep an eye out for those things. Don't worry so much about the round of 64 when you don't have a lot of information, but then really lock in for the round of 32 and beyond after having seen some of those patterns, hopefully, and how they played those games. That will really help you throw the spreads, the totals, the brackets out the window and go, geez, I can actually make some money doing this.
Yeah, significantly more than whatever you have on your bracket.
And Shane?
Yep.
You're a better college basketball better than I am. So anything you'd like to add?
Anything I'd like? Oh, wow. I think my favorite part of it's maybe not an ad, but an emphasis on what you kind of got into there is really zeroing in on those better schools, those better programs that fall behind perhaps a little bit early, and really sort of watch them come out in the second half, see that they've made those adjustments. They'll make the adjustments. They'll make them, and most likely they'll execute. And that's the key thing there, I think, is that they have the people to execute. They have the coaching to execute, and coaching matters so much at this level. I don't think I can stress that enough, especially as somebody who coaches kids myself. I can tell you that coaching matters so much at this kind of at this level of sports. And so I would trust those big programs when you do see them fall behind to potentially make the comeback, but watch to make sure that they have made those adjustments and they have improved.
Speaking of coaches, that's why I think St. John's is getting all this hype.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, look at them. They've been fantastic.
They can't make free throws. No one seems to care.
Yeah.
No one seems to care. They can't shoot a 3-pointer, and they can't make free throws, and no one seems to care.
No.
They're like of all the good teams, they're the one with the absolute worst glaring weakness. Like they're 65th in offensive rating in the nation. And like of like any of the top teams, like that's by far the worst rating on either side of the ball.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've gone through I think everything. I think we've covered off how we're going to be attacking March Madness as bettors, and hopefully all of you out there tuning in, will be able to benefit from that. I've completed the bracket for Behind the Lines promo bracket. So let me share that all with you now. And Pace, we have something that's a little bit different, and maybe you can explain it to people, but a bonus team. And this is what, any team that you can pick that perhaps you don't have making it deep into the tournament, you can pick them as a bonus team to win it. Is that how it works?
The bonus team is a calculation of how many wins that team gets, provided that you pick them to win that game as well, multiplied by their seed. So you want to pick a bonus. If you pick Duke as your bonus team, your biggest upside is 5 bonus points. Whereas if you picked Oregon as your bonus team, 1 win from them equates to the same as Duke winning it all.
Oh,
so you want a bonus team with a higher seed.
Okay, gotcha.
That you think can go far. And it also, who's your...
I got St. John's. We got St. John's here as the bonus team.
They're a
2 seed.
You don't want that.
You don't want that. Okay. I'm happy to change my bonus team here on the fly.
Okay.
We want to pick...
So who is your... It looks like you've got Gonzaga going to the Elite 8.
We got Gonzaga in the Elite 8 there, yep.
Okay, they're an 8 seed. They're your highest seed going the furthest.
Yeah.
And in your final 4, you have a 4 seed. I think Gonzaga's your bonus team.
Gonzaga? All right, let's go over to the Bulldogs.
Yep.
Kenny, if you're listening out there, buddy, look at that, our bonus team. All right, let's go up. Boom, Gonzaga. All right, so there we go. We've got Florida over Duke in the final. Game total 155, and Gonzaga as the bonus team. The final 4 is Florida, obviously Duke. We've got Michigan State, and we've got Kentucky.
So if anyone wants to cheer along to have a chance to win the prize pool, you want this bracket to win. So you can screenshot it and have some no skin in the game action, but you do have to enter the contest thereafter, which requires the entry at pinnacle.com/InplayLIVE.
Right.
So you just take that screenshot, send it over to Raj, and all entries for that will be included as well. Once this happens, all entries that you've already given will be included for that as well.
All right. Bracket submitted.
Submitted, Shane.
There we go, guys.
You're in.
Submitted.
Baby.
It's in. And of course, I'll be doing my own other bracket in there. You guys will be competing with me, and Pace and John will have one in there. And Ryan Hammer, who was on last week, is competing with us too, and he'll have his bracket in there. So
his bracket's in already. He's submitted.
There we go. Boom.
So
he's in.
Yeah.
We mentioned the Pinnacle contest and Pace. Before we go, we got to mention the other thing on Pinnacle that I sort of discovered. I knew you were working on it, but it was funny when I logged into my Pinnacle account and I saw it pop up. But I got the message. Pinnacle will send you messages in your account there. I got the message, and Pace, you got like a masterclass going on in Pinnacle of how to bet live. It's pretty cool. I've watched the first one through, and the second one is up.
The second one's up?
The second one's up, buddy. I got the message there today.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure I'll have seen it by the time this airs. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm most proud of episode 4.
Okay.
I love episode 4. It was a lot of fun to do. It was educating for myself. It's a lot of the things we've talked about on this podcast, but yeah, check out the Pinnacle Academy. I've been super blessed and been very fortunate to whether it's my betting setup being featured on Vision or Barstool, or some of the articles that our guy there, Danny Funt, has written about InplayLIVE. I've been so blessed to have that exposure. And Shane, obviously, you were a big part of getting some of those national news broadcast coverages here in Canada as well.
Right.
Super blessed, but this is by far the one I'm most proud of because those other publications, I think they're amazing. I don't want to discredit them, but they're not for bettors.
Right.
And I think that this is information. It's a lot like the podcast, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's just a new spotlight. And hopefully by the time the 4 episodes are done, there are sports bettors out there that go, holy shit, I didn't know about this, or wow, I never saw this. I knew about it, but I never saw this angle to it. Or wow, geez, there's a better way that I can be doing this, and just open people's eyes a little bit more to the ways that you can benefit from sports betting and profitability. John made a really great reference on stream yesterday where he's like, if you just have money sitting there and you plan to invest in the S&P or the NASDAQ or, crypto or whatever it is, and you look at the year-on-year returns of some of these categories, as a whole, and he goes, well, this is my futures ROI. So you still have to have money sitting in something for an extended period of time. But this is the ROI, and it's real. This isn't like, some we talked about the touts and the tipsters, like this is real, right? So, there is an ROI, there is a positive expected value, member success stories, they roll in. We had one yesterday of someone that I know personally, but never used me as a resource for like one-on-one help or help on the side. The guy was a $5 bettor and he just hit $10,000 in profit. So he's not a $5 bettor anymore. He is spinning 3% units.
Yeah.
$300 is what he's spinning right now. But man, that's what it's all about. There's people that come in and they're like, oh, but I'm sitting on stream all day and I'm betting $5 units and I finished up the day up $7. What a waste of time. But they don't understand the impact of scaling and how that plays such an important role. So in this guy's example that I just gave, it took him 13 months to hit $10,000. Shane, we went through your story.
Yeah.
13 months is a long time to have only made $10,000. But the next 13 months, if the scalability remains the same, a $300 bankroll to $10,000 is what this guy did. So factor that scalability into the next 13 and then the 13 after that. And before you know it, life's about perspective.
It really
right?
is. And the other side of this too is yes, there's the sort of compounding of how the bankroll grows, but along the way he's learned skills. This is a skill that he takes with him throughout the rest of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere, right? It's something that's with you forever. and that's worth a lot.
Totally. But imagine, life's about perspective. Imagine the same situation where you go, oh my God, I'm 4 years into university. I'm down $200,000.
And maybe you're going to go get an entry level job somewhere that's going to pay you nothing close to what you need.
Exactly. So if you view it as, I just did a year of schooling, I made 10 grand learning the skills that are going to take me this next year to hopefully a potential 6-figure income. It's a real different way of flipping the script that helps you overcome the obstacles and the challenges of, the day-to-day, the days where, I just referenced the $7 gain after a full day. Well, what about the day with the $7 loss?
Yeah.
Or in some of our case, John and I more specifically maybe than Shane, but some of the $30,000, $40,000 days where you're down that much, right? And John and I both had those, I think.
That's a bad one. Yeah.
Yeah, we both had a few of those, but it's worth it, and it's a part of the journey.
Absolutely. All right. Well, great advice. We'll leave it there, guys. Enjoy the tournament. Enjoy March Madness, and for all of you listening out there, we've got a couple great guests coming up for you in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in for those. They're going to be great too. All right, fellas.
No one's better than John.
Well, we love having John on, and baseball's around the corner. John, can we expect you for some grind sessions on baseball?
We got to grind like Nerfies somehow, where John gives them all out for like Saturday when the lineups aren't even released yet. Terrible advice.
I know. Yeah, telling you to bet a Nerfie when you don't even know who the pitchers are and stuff. Yeah. I know.
Anyway, we'll figure something out, John, and we'll have you back again soon, I'm sure. All right, guys.
Yeah.
Till next week. Keep beating those bucks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join InplayLIVE, use promo code Behind the Lines.